Hello, and welcome back to Unconditional, a podcast by Transcend with Love. I am so excited to be here today. Last week, we talked about the parent's perspective of a child coming out. And I explained my story and what I wish I would have done differently and the things that I regret. Today, I am so excited to have my beloved Brit on with us today.
Hello.
They are going to give us their perspective of their coming out story. Just a little background. Brit and I met in 2020. It was National Coming Out Day in 2020. We were both part of the board of the LGBT group, the Pride group here in the town I'm in now. They have since moved to Colorado, so where it's, I'm sure, a little colder than it is in Texas. So yeah, we met, and instantly, at least in my perspective, I just loved them. Like, there was this mama bear protection feeling that I got immediately when we started talking, and since then they've become my unofficial adopted child. And so we've stayed, we've gone through a lot together. I was very sad when they moved, but it's an amazing move. They're doing great right now, about to get their master's in a couple months in behavioral therapy.
Was that recreation therapy?
Okay, I was close.
Yeah, you're close.
So I'm so excited. Thank you so much, Brit, for coming on today. I know this is your coming out story is not a happy one. It's one that I think more people than not can associate with, or can really empathize with, because unfortunately, this is the reality of people that come out to their family and to their loved ones, is the reaction that you received, and the journey that you've been on, instead of the more, hey, we love you no matter what type of situation. So with that, I want to go ahead and get started and ask you about how it happened. Like, question, how long had you known that you were under the LGBT? So how do you classify, like, how do you label yourself?
That's a good question. I feel like it changes frequently now, but right now, lesbian.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So at that point, how long was it that you realized that you were a lesbian before you said anything to anybody?
Gosh, I believe it started when I was 18 or 19. But it wasn't like me being able to comfortably come to terms with it, because I grew up in a very religious family, and that rhetoric was still very deeply embedded in my mind of like, oh, this is wrong, I need to change it. So it wasn't until later on in my 20s is when I really decided this is who I am, and when I ended up coming out was in my 20s.
Okay. And did you have when you came out, is that like you came out with everybody, or like did anybody of your friends or anybody like that know beforehand, before like the coming out to your family?
Yes, I had one friend that I grew up with, and we were like the best of friends all our lives. She knew, and I also told my brother a few months before I told everyone else, and his response was pretty unique and genuine for him. So, but he was accepting and just like, okay, not a big deal, which kind of made me feel more at ease, preparing to come out later. I was hopeful that the responses would be similar to those.
Okay, so how did it finally happen?
It finally happened. I was 24. It was May of 2015. And I was at home and I was talking with my mom, and I was telling her that I had plans to go to a town that's like an hour away from where I was living at the time. And I had been making that trip a couple times for the last couple months prior. And she knew of that because anytime she would text and say, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'd say, "Oh, I'm here." And so it wasn't until this moment when I was sitting there talking with her, and um, I don't know how it came up, but she just started questioning, um, like, "Are you this?" And she didn't want to say like the word or anything, which makes sense, based on, how their feelings of LGBTQ community were at that time. Um, but as she questioned, I was like, well, yeah, that is who I am, and that's how I identify. And the response I got was, it was heartbreaking. And it was one that I wish could have been different, obviously, but I still see like all the love that she had for me. It's just she was going through all the emotions that you had mentioned before in your previous podcast of, oh my gosh, this is happening. What do I do? And um, at first, it was, I don't accept that. I don't support you. Um, Even commenting to say, like, if I die one day, I want to know that I'll see you in heaven. And I don't think that's going to happen. So that was really heartbreaking at the time. So it was a rough coming out to my mom. And I don't remember how the conversation ended. I'm sure it was awkward and quiet, and I probably just left. But yeah, that's pretty much it coming out to my mom. My dad was a different time.
Okay, so we'll talk about your dad, but let's talk a little bit about your mom, if it's okay.
Mhm.
Um, so at that point, how was your relationship?
At that point, excuse me, we were actually having a really good relationship at that time. I was teaching, it was my first year teaching because I had graduated with my bachelor's in elementary education. So it was my first year teaching at my alma mater, and that was fun. Um, and so every day after work, I would be calling her on the phone, just telling her about my day. And so we were really close at that time. And is probably one of the for a couple of months in my life that her and I were the closest. Because teenage years, you're like, stay
Yeah,
away.
I
But
know that very well.
yes. So after that is when we were in a really good place. But the moment I came out, it seemed to drastically change, and that was hard.
So how long, I'm going to ask this because others don't know, but how is your relationship with your mom now?
So my mom passed away in 2016, so a year after I came out, unfortunately, and that was a really rough year for us. There wasn't a lot of real in-depth communication. It was just like, "How are you doing? Are you okay?" Kind of things like that. And so now I still struggle because before she passed away, we had not had the opportunity to kind of reconcile um, our feelings and our viewpoints on who I am. And that is something I still deal with today. And I think I'll just say it's really complicated. It's made things really complicated. Um, but luckily, I have a really great support system and therapist that can help me process through all these emotions continuously because something always comes up. Um, and those feelings are still lingering very much to this day. So,
I'm so sorry that you weren't able to reconcile with your mom. I know that's been a difficult thing for you. Um, well, if it makes you feel better, I think you'll see her in heaven.
thank you. That means a lot. Yes.
And so let me ask you this. I mean, this might be an obvious like answer to, when I ask this question, the answer might seem obvious, but I want to ask it anyways.
Okay.
If you could go back to the day that you came out, um, is there anything you wish you would have done differently?
Yes. I wish it had been me that started that conversation. And I wish I had been able to like lead it as, and say it in terms that she would, recognize and be acceptable of. Because I'm not trying to bash faith, but religion played a really big role in the response that I got. And that's why it's so unsafe for very many people to come out to very religious families. And so if that's you, please take care of yourself and don't come out until you are ready and you can be safe. That's my little side note.
No, for sure. Thank you.
But I wish I had the opportunity to kind of start that conversation and tell my side of the story versus assumptions being made and just having to respond to the assumptions.
So when the reaction came from your mom, I'm assuming that the reason you guys didn't talk a lot or reconcile, was it because you then felt unsafe? Was it because she then no longer gave you that space to talk about? Like, what made you guys like not? And I can't speak. Obviously, we can't speak for her, so I'm asking your perspective, like on your side. What made you not? Or maybe you did try to keep, the conversation going and maybe, reconciling. I mean, what did you try? And if not, what made you not try?
I think I did try because, she's my mom and I love her, and I wanted to keep those doors of communication open. It just seemed that each time any topic of like who I was or how I identified, or any part of the LGBTQ community came up, that's when the conversation got really just shut down pretty quickly, or awkward. But besides that, it was more just like, hey, we're having dinner. Do you want to come? But you can't bring your partner, kind of thing. So that was another just aspect of it where you can come and hang out and have dinner with us or come celebrate a birthday, but they cannot come. So that was hard for me.
Yeah. So did you choose to go without, or did you choose to attend without your partner, or did you choose to just not go? Or was it a mixture?
It was a mixture, and it was a really hard decision to make each time. Each time I left, because my partner and I were living together at the time, each time I had to leave the house, it was a crying fest. And, the whole way to my parents' house, it was like, I feel guilty for having to leave this person that I love. And I still regret that. Like, part of me wishes I could have, stood up and stood my ground a little better. But at the time, I still had a lot of growing up to do, which happened later on. After I came out to a couple more people, I had to really learn how to stand up on my own and mature pretty quickly.
Mid-20s is still young. I mean, we feel like at that time we feel like we're like still mature and adults, and technically we are, but there's still a lot of growing up to do. So yes,
For sure.
I understand that. Okay, so let me. I'm going to give you a scenario. I'm not a scenario. I'm going to give you a what if, right? Just we're going to try. The reason I'm about to do this is because for those people that are watching, for those parents that are watching that maybe that feel like your mom did. There's so many parents that feel that way, and the initial shock, the first thing that comes out is reaction of fear and shock, and I've talked about that. So what I'm trying to do right now is say, okay, if I'm a person that when at the time I'm very much I'm very religious or very conservative, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying where we are, or this parent is, what knowing that your parent is feels that way, and that maybe you and them don't agree on those views of religion or beliefs and spirituality, what would have been a good reaction that you think would have come, like one that's not come an authentic reaction from a parent that would have still made you feel loved and safe, even though they are expressing that they're not exactly there on the accepting part of it? Does that make sense?
That does make sense. Yes. I'm tracking. Excuse me. I think a simple, I love you no matter what, or a thank you for being courageous enough to come out, would have been, or would have felt much safer and more accepting. However, I don't see that ever happening. Or it's a wishful thinking.
Yeah.
That definitely would not have happened, but that is what I wish would happen.
Okay.
And when I hear stories of other people coming out and receiving that same input of like, I love you no matter what, like you and your kids, that's what gives me hope that not every coming out story is going to be bad or rough. So thank you for being that person that said, I love you no matter what, and I'm here for you. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. And I've told you the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I'm glad. I think that's a perfect answer, honestly, because one, it's very genuine. As a parent, we do love our children and we want to support them regardless. We get stuck in our own ways, as people do. And I think that's perfectly acceptable, because that not only shows you, hey, let's immediately take away your fear of you're about to be rejected. Because I'm assuming that is your number one fear right before it comes out of your mouth, right? Is that, am I not going to have a family?
Yeah. Yes.
Anymore. And I can't imagine the scenarios that would have gone through your head of, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. You probably thought, okay, if they reject me, what am I going to do? And you were already living on your own. But for individuals that still live at home, their immediate probably thought is, am I going to get kicked out? Am I going to, like, how am I going to live? How am I going to eat? Who am I going to see? Let me ask you a kind of a personal question. And if you do not want to answer this, it's perfectly fine. Prior to you coming out, I'm assuming you probably had anxiety about it. Did you do any kind of self-harm?
Full disclosure, yes, I struggled a lot from when I was like 12 years old on with self-harm in the form of cutting. So, and I had been to therapist after therapist. I've been to like 18 in my life. But trying to deal with that situation and kind of figure out why I struggled so much with my anxiety and self-harm. I think it's something that still kind of comes and goes. The urges will still be there even now, after I feel like I've started this healing journey that I'm on. And I think I haven't checked in the last 3 days, but I think I'm at like 3.5 months self-harm free right now. So
oh my God, yay! I'm so
that's pretty
proud
cool.
of you. I am so proud of you, honey.
But yeah, that is something I struggle with, and my mental health was a hot mess. But again, I'm thankful now that I have a great support system, including you. So thank you.
You're doing amazing, by the way. I am so proud of you. Like,
thank you.
I've told you on the phone, I left you on voicemails, I cry. Like, I'm just so proud of you. Okay. So I'm going to move on to your dad.
Okay.
If that's okay. Unless, is there anything else you want to say about the relationship with your mom, or if you wish that they would have done stuff been done differently? Anything any advice, like specifically about the way it handled with your mother, especially now that she's no longer here with you?
I think some advice I would give is if you come out to someone who, a parent who is very religious, and has that mindset of it's wrong to be a certain way, go in preparing, having a lot of grace in your heart for them, which is hard because you want to be accepted and you want to be heard. Um, but that's not always going to happen. So have grace for them and where they are at in their faith journey, and know that they're doing the best they can with what they know. And sometimes that might not always be the best thing for you personally. So you have to have grace for other people, and how they react, because their reaction has nothing to do with who you are as a person. So, which that took me a long time to learn that.
Yeah, that's a hard one, and I know that that's one of the things that I say is we need to have grace not only for others but for ourselves as well. Because you probably didn't have a lot of grace for yourself at that moment either, right?
I didn't.
I'm going to assume that you were thinking that it was all your fault. You had shame, you had guilt. Look at what you're doing to your mom,
A lot of
right?
shame, a lot of guilt.
And why can't I change this? Why can't I fix this? I'm not saying this is what it was. I'm saying
It went
this is
over and over in my head. Yes, all of those things.
right. So, what do you think it would look like for you if you had grace? Obviously you went through this whole thing, and you're in a better place now. If you had been where you are now back then, do you think you would have had more grace on yourself? And what would that look like?
I think I definitely would have more grace on myself, and the way I view myself, um, would definitely be different, because now I don't rely on other people's opinions of me to kind of know how I feel, and like I don't rely on their opinions to determine who I am and how I feel, which again took a long time to learn, and I'm still learning. There's always challenges every day. But if I had the mentality that I have now back then, I definitely would have had more grace and compassion on myself. And I think that would have solved a lot of the shame and guilt issues.
Yeah, because in my perspective, the way I've seen in my own experience, when I have more grace for myself, it allows me to have more grace for other people.
Absolutely.
And then regardless of how it ends up, even if it ends up in like the way you don't want it to end up, then because of the grace you gave, it allows you to get to the forgiveness part a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
Not only for them but for yourself. Um and I think the trauma of it is probably reduced because at that point you already know that you did the best you could. You did everything you could have, and that
Mm-hmm.
you recognize that they did the best they could with what they had at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what the thing about grace is. A lot of people don't realize that it's seen, at least I used to see it this way. Tell me if you see it this way or not. But I used to see it as having grace for myself was letting me off the hook. Like me not wanting to take responsibility for something
Mm-hmm.
is how I used to see it. I've always been the person that you have to be responsible for your actions, for what you say, for your thoughts. And so giving myself any slack on that, including grace, was no, I'm taking the easy way out. Or giving other people grace and forgiveness was weak.
I I do see that. I track with that. Yes.
Okay, so I mean, and I think that's the problem that we have right now, especially in society in this world, is that it's so much basically screw me once, shame on you, screw me twice, shame on me mentality. And we're so afraid of getting that to that second point and getting hurt again or making a mistake again. I mean, I'm speaking here from my biggest fear is making a mistake, which is stuck all the time. Um, and I think the thing is because there's no grace to have with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so yeah, so I really do think that would have been, I think that would have helped a lot. And I'm glad that you brought that up. Okay, actually, okay, so we are like almost at 30 minutes.
I
So
know.
are you okay with coming back next week and talking more about like your dad and like the rest of your family and what that looked like, and
Sure thing. Yeah,
anything else that might help a person coming out, or and then I can talk about the parent side of that if you're good with that?
absolutely. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's plan on that. And I am so grateful for you for sharing. I know your story is a difficult one,
It
for
is.
sharing it and being willing to put that out there for others, as you're doing an amazing thing by trying to help others. And like I said before, I am super proud of you. So everybody, thank you so much again for coming. And I look forward to talking to you again next week, where we will continue our conversation with the amazing Brit. And yeah, so also I'm kind of excited that the pronouns are a little newer to me from when I met them 3 years ago. So hey, yay! I did not use the wrong
You did
pronoun.
great. You did great. I'm so proud of you.
But thank you for giving me grace, knowing that I could have.
Yes,
um,
absolutely.
for all those out there, if any of this has resonated with you, please do not hesitate to reaching out. I actually have 30-minute free consultations that I give. Reach out to me via Messenger. I am on Facebook, on Instagram. I have my YouTube page. There's so many different ways you can reach me. Let's talk. Let's chat. If we want to have a 30-minute free consultation, we can. The important thing is just not doing this alone. As you can see, on both sides, there is a lot of regret that we have because we didn't know what to do. So why go with this alone when you can have somebody there to help you? I just want to say, remember, the most important thing is to have love, unconditional love and respect for your loved one, your child, and yourself, because with that, we can transcend all struggles. You guys have a great week. Thank you.